The NFL draft is over. What did the Cowboys do next? We will break it down on this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox. No console needed. Head over to amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. On today's show, we're looking at the Dallas Cowboys post-draft. What do they need to do next to get their football team ready for week one? Landon, everybody knows that wide receiver is at the very top of their need list. But after receiver, which we'll get to in a second, what do they need to accomplish before week one?
Well, it is funny, because we've been, I'm sure like everybody else, been hitting up all the sites, listening to all the podcasts, trying to get, how does everyone feel about the Cowboys draft? What's the general consensus? And then everyone's just basically been like, man, the Cowboys had a fantastic draft as long as they figure out this wide receiver too situation somewhere. So I obviously that's kind of, let's put that separate for over here for a second, because we'll have a whole conversation about that. Outside of that, I think we feel like, okay, they added a corner on the outside. You still have some questions about how that nickel situation is going to look. I think we like the re-signing of Izzy Mukuamu because we like Izzy Mukuamu a lot, and I do think that he has the capability of playing in that spot just based on what we've seen of him previously. But I think it would be nice to have a little bit more certainty here, maybe have another veteran presence here to kind of push him in that spot because, it's a lot of unknown. He does have kind of an unconventional body type for playing in the nickel. I think you feel good about the ability of Deron Bland to step in there if you needed him to, and I think that probably would be the plan. Once Diggs came back, and if you had all three of your, the last time the Cowboys had all three,
that's
of their
never happening again. I'm just
but if it were to happen, I think you could probably kick Bland inside. But until then, I think you're going to need to find another body to kind of get in there and mix it up with Mukuamu before you're going to feel really comfortable at that spot.
Yeah, to me, it's the slot corner spot, and unfortunately, there's just not a lot of names out there. I mean, Mike Hilton, I think, is still available. He's probably the top guy. He's more of a slot corner that's a run defender and a blitzer, more so than a coverage player, which is fine. Like you can live with that. Just you have to acknowledge, like you don't want him in one-on-one situations. The other spot for me, Landon, is defensive tackle. Like you look at the defensive tackle depth chart, and it's Oso Digizua, it's Mozzie Smith, it's Solomon Thomas, who is an okay backup. And then it's just a bunch of unproven names, whether it's Justin Rogers, who they drafted last year from Auburn, a couple guys they got later in this year's draft. You're relying a lot on young players who haven't played at a position that's typically or historically takes a long time to develop. I would love to see them get one more Linval Joseph type players that can come in for 15, 20 snaps and give you adequate play.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think that those are the kind of guys that usually you sign a little bit later on, right? Like, is that not often they don't want to go to training camp or they're just not interested in signing at this point of the year. So don't be shocked if that's a need that gets filled maybe a little bit later into the summer. But
camp's over.
Yeah, probably around then. I wouldn't be shocked at all if they added another veteran presence inside just to kind of suss things out. I think that's the other thing that's good too. There is that I think these young guys need these reps, right? Like, so you don't necessarily want to bring in a veteran for OTAs and training camp simply because you want to see what you've got in Mozzie and I've already forgotten some of our Jay Toia and some of these guys. So I think it is good to kind of give these guys some runway, to opportunity to get in there and kind of learn the system and be part of that. And frankly, these 30-plus-year-old, 330-plus-pound guys, I mean, they only want to be on the field when they absolutely have to. So there's plenty of time to sign them later.
What about running back? Because I think that's the other spot that people are looking at. Could the Cowboys go after a veteran running back, whether it's in free agency or trade?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on who it is, right? Like if they feel like they can upgrade the veteran running back room from where it is currently, like I mean, obviously the name that kind of keeps getting floated out around there is Nick Chubb. I think there was a lot of assumption that Chubb was going to be headed back to the Browns. His contract expired. The Browns were going to go through the draft, obviously, to see what happens. And the Browns ended up taking 2 running backs. So I do think that Nick Chubb coming back to them, is probably up in the air a little bit more than it certainly was previous to the draft. I think he kind of fits the sort of running back that you would like to pair with Blue. And so obviously you've got the guys that you drafted. You got Maffa, you've got Williams in there already, but it's hard to ignore the fact that Chubb would be probably a pretty serious upgrade on those 2 guys. The question is, do you want to pay that money to bring him in? What's the value there?
And the hard part, like via trade, is you're getting a lot of guys who are either expensive or they're like on the back 9 of their careers. And like, I think Travis Etienne is one of those examples, right? Jacksonville drafted Byshal Tootin at the top of the 4th round. They have Tank Bigsby. That's somebody that we've circled for a while, but he kind of got played off the field last year by Tank Bigsby, who is a good player, but not a great player. It's just, is it worth giving up draft capital for somebody that you think is a slight upgrade over Miles Sanders and Javonte Williams? If it's a day 3 pick, I don't care, but you're going to have to be willing to pay 10 to 12 million for that type of player. And I'm not sure Dallas is willing to do that.
Yeah, I mean, running back doesn't make quite as much sense, for a trade, especially now that you've kind of have your juice player a little bit. I think that, you're not quite at a spot at running back where you are desperate that you feel like you need to trade for a running back. It's not the wide receiver. I think at the very least, I feel good about these 4 guys going into training camp and competing. The running back market would only be in a situation where you feel like you are actually upgrading and the value is right. Like it's not worth giving away future picks for another running back, I think, at this point.
Can I give you one more position that I'm curious to see if the Cowboys will do anything? What about swing tackle? Because that's a position they had Chuma Udoga last year, who started a lot of games and who started a bunch of games for them over the last several years. He left in free agency. Is that a spot that makes you at least a little bit nervous?
Not me. Because I personally want to see Awesome Richards get the opportunity to do that job, right? And I do think that there are enough tackles on this team that at least intrigue you early. I don't know. I mean, the only thing I would, kind of countering my own argument is that how's the market playing, right? Like, because you don't want to get to a situation where, maybe the last swing tackle has left the free agent market. You get into OTAs, into training camp, and you're like, I don't know if this Richards is going to be able to do it. I don't know if Nathan Thomas is going to be able to do it. I don't know if these guys are going to be able to do it. So I do think you want to provide enough runway to allow those guys to get in there and try to take that job. And I think that also, having Awesome Richards be out there to push guys like Tyler Guyton, I think is important. I think it depends on where the tackle market is. And honestly, I don't know off the top of my head.
Is there any other spot that you could see the Cowboys adding like a veteran? Like, I'm going to give you some names. Like Von Miller's out there. We've always heard that Von Miller would like to play for the Cowboys. Darius Smith is out there. Would you be open to adding one of these guys that's like has one more year left in them before they retire? Or do you kind of just want to get to training camp and see the depth?
I think with defensive end, it's like you've got the bodies, right? Like you've already got your veteran guy that, in Fowler that you want to see out there. You've got 3 young guys out there that you really want to kind of see. Well, actually, now you've got like almost 4 young guys that you want to see out there. So I think at this point, the defensive end position specifically is probably in a good spot. But again, any of these spots, I mean, I would say linebacker may be another one that if someone was interesting and came available, like just kind of continue to try to improve that spot. But you have numbers at both of those spots. So it's not like you just need to add bodies. It's like finding the right talent that shows up.
Yep. All right, let's talk about the wide receiver position because that's all you guys care about anyways, is who can the Cowboys find to be their number 2 receiver opposite of CeeDee Lamb. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment? It's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, all of your investments, all of your spending in one place, so you can stop managing your money and start building your wealth. I started using Monarch Money a couple months ago, and I realized how much money I was wasting on dining out, coffee runs, whatever. Now I am budgeting smarter and I am saving more. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Later, let's talk about the wide receiver position, because we all know this is a spot that the Cowboys need to address. Let's talk about some trade options, because I know that's been rumored for a while. I think Diana Rossini had a report on Tuesday that the Cowboys were interested in George Pickens. How do they get this done?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the Pickens situation. It sounds like the Cowboys and Pittsburgh previously potentially traded conversations about this. It has also sounded, according to Rossini's report, that this has kind of gone a little bit cold. To me, that report is Pittsburgh upping their offer, right? I think that's at least in my mind, and it is a chance.
Pittsburgh wanted a day 2 pick, and Dallas had no interest in giving a day 2 pick.
Yeah. Okay. So that makes sense, right? I think so. At this point, that's not completely off the table. I don't imagine, depending on how that goes. Maybe as time goes on, one of the two sides will thaw a little bit on that, but I think that offer isn't off I guess Pickens being on the trade market is not off the table yet, right? I would imagine.
Although I would say I think there's a lot less motivation from the Steelers side of things to get a deal done now, because I think the thought process was, let's get a top 100 pick, and that way we can replace Pickens, because we have an older roster with the hopes of Aaron Rodgers being the quarterback. I wonder now they're just like, let's just play it out.
Yeah, I mean, but then again, maybe they think about the fact that they got to also add Aaron Rodgers to that locker room, and they're like, man, the combination of those two together doesn't seem great.
I would have thought you'd figured that out before, but
yeah, but we'll see. But I think those are the kind of deals that you're looking for, right? Where a guy's in a contract year or has fallen out of favor with the current coaching staff, and you're looking to flip a pick for them, right? Should we mention the other name that we've been kind of discussing?
Sure. First of all, let me just, before we get to the other name, I want to say with George Pickens, I've seen every single snap that George Pickens has taken since he's been in Athens at Georgia. I don't get this one from a Cowboys perspective at all. Like, he's not I hate to use the Jason Garrett phrase, but he's not the right kind of guy. Mm-hmm. And wherever he's gone, he's not been a winning player. He's been somebody that is very talented, that his physical gifts are unbelievable, but you watch him play over the course of a game, and he does some really dumb things that caused his teams to lose. I don't think I would want to be in the business of trading assets for George Pickens.
I can understand that for sure. Like, if I didn't feel like the Cowboys were in a spot that they needed to do something like this, I probably would never suggest this either. Again, I also think that the part of the circumstance aspect of this makes this more palatable for us, right? Like the fact that it is a contract year, maybe that motivates them a little bit. Maybe it doesn't, though. I mean, the truth is Pickens has had plenty of motivation to play well and to kind of act right, and he doesn't. So the hope, obviously we're hoping against hope here on some of this stuff. But I think I would also like to point out that none of these solutions that anybody's going to come up with are without wars, right? Or without some sort of serious war. And I also think that the more mercurial the talent, like the higher the talent, the more stuff you're going to have to likely deal with, and that goes all the way through free agency or trade with wide receivers.
Yes. but I would much rather do the next
Fair.
one that we're going to talk about, which is DJ Moore from the Chicago Bears. He's 28. He's had 4 seasons of at least 1,200 yards from scrimmage. He's had every single season he's been in the NFL. He's racked up at least 950 yards. Now, why would the Bears potentially trade?
That's a pushback I keep getting from people, and let's talk about that.
So they've spent a lot of resources on their receivers. They spent the number 9 pick on Rome Odunze. They spent the number 10 pick on Colston Loveland. They spent the 40th pick on Luther Burden. They gave Cole Kmet a massive contract extension in 2023. DeAndre Swift, they paid a lot of money to. They just might not feel like DJ Moore is a number 1 receiver worth paying what he's getting paid. However, for a team like Dallas that doesn't need a number 1 receiver, I do think Moore makes a lot of sense as a number 2 that can play outside, can play in the slot. And because DJ Moore was brought in from a previous coaching staff, I wonder if Ben Johnson thinks he doesn't fit his offense.
Yeah, and the question becomes, like, I think, DJ Moore was pretty frustrated with his spot on the team last year, or at least the circumstances around the team last year. And if Ben Johnson is going to kind of put him in that role, like I think you even said it, the kind of sacrificial X role that you saw in Detroit, where
Josh Reynolds was running a lot of time. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked that doesn't exactly satiate DJ Moore's desire to get more touches, right? So
we should mention that DJ Moore last year was basically, it's very funny the way this turned out, because they basically used him on go balls and screens. And it's why he averaged 9.9 yards per reception, which is very similar to the receiver they just drafted, Luther Burden, who was in a very similar offense in Missouri in 2024. So it's just, I've always compared Burden to DJ Moore, and now it's funny that they're on the same team together.
Well, I mean, yes, it's funny, but it also feels like, kind of a slap in the face directly to DJ Moore. And then on top of that, Ben Johnson, had this quote coming out of the press conference about how some people are going to need to work a little bit harder. No. So this was done maybe as a light the fire under DJ Moore's butt sort of move. Man, DJ, if you don't want to put up with that stuff from this rookie coach, man, feel free to tell your agent you want to trade, and let's get it done, buddy.
Couple things really quickly. He's got guaranteed money left on his deal in 2025 and 2026. But the base number is the base number is $23 million for each of the next 4 years. I think he's the 12th highest paid receiver in the league, which is expensive, but that's going to go down pretty quickly, right? Once some of these other receivers start getting paid. So yes, you're paying him like a top 10, top 15 receiver, but he's also worth it. He's 28. This isn't somebody who is 31 like Devontae Adams or 32. He just turned 28 years old. So if you can rent him for the next 3 or 4 years, and if it only costs you a second round pick, I'm 100% in.
Absolutely. So I feel too. And at the worst comes of it, maybe you even, depending on how the deal works out, maybe he even goes and signs somewhere else and you get a comp pick out of the deal down the road.
You move on. And again, there's no guaranteed money beyond 2026. So this is not a long-term commitment at all. And Lane, I think he fits the offense really well because he can play outside. He can play in the slot. You can use him in the backfield. He loves going in motion. So pairing him with CeeDee Lamb, another guy that's 6 foot, 215 pounds that can make plays after the catch, I think it's an outstanding fit in Brian Schottenheimer's offense. Let's talk about some free agent receivers if the Cowboys don't want to go the trade route that could interest the Cowboys, including an old friend. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props, from three-pointers to steals to assists. FanDuel has so many ways to bet on your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head over to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Scouting Show. The NFL draft is over, but we still have roster moves and news that never stops. Hosts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. And find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. All right, Landon, let's talk about an old friend, Amari Cooper, who we thought the Cowboys maybe have given up on. They traded him a couple of years ago to the Cleveland Browns. It sure seemed like the Cowboys were out of the Amari Cooper sweepstakes. But according to Nick Harris of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, Cowboys have kind of opened up the idea of bringing Amari back to fill their number 2 receiver role. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'd still be pretty surprised if this happened. I mean, I look, obviously, you look at that kind of wide receiver free agent market, and his name is certainly near the top of that. There's just a lot of history here, and I get that most of the the kind of bad blood that existed between McCarthy and Cooper, and some folks probably didn't love the way that whole situation went down inside the team. But I also think that there are plenty of people that are still inside the building that also didn't love the way that Cooper acted and didn't love the way that Cooper's behavior, near the end of the season was, and specifically in regards to, not always making it out to practice because he's a little bruised up, and then what that means to the kind of chemistry and timing of things, and not always putting in effort as a blocker, and so I think that the issue is that the Cowboys spent this whole offseason kind of talking about wanting to get guys with football character and guys who love football. And I don't want to sit here and say that I don't think that Amari Cooper loves football, because I think that's an unfair thing to say. But I think that the way that he expresses his love for football, or the aspects of football that he enjoys, doesn't necessarily line up with the kind of behavior of the folks that the Cowboys are talking about when they say guys who love football. So I just wonder if this isn't really an extremely awkward fit that may end up just happening because of absolute necessity.
All right. So as the local Amari Cooper apologist, let me give you the reason why I think this works. First of all, let's back up a little bit. 2023, he had 1,250 yards and I think 15 games. Like, he was awesome. Honestly, I think that might have been the best I've ever seen him play. He was incredible in 2023, and that was with Joe Flacco and Dorian Thompson-Robinson and PJ Walker and the shell of Deshaun Watson throwing him the ball. So it wasn't that long ago. He was still like a bona fide number 1 receiver. 2024 starts the season in Cleveland, and Watson is a mess. And then he gets hurt. And then he gets traded to Buffalo midway through the season. And it's really hard to jump onto a team midway through the season, especially a team like Buffalo that has a lot of weapons and that's really good on offense. And he makes some plays, but kind of gets phased out of the offense as the year goes on. Also, I want to mention the weather here in November, December was awful. Just to remember. So, like, Amari is not a good cold weather receiver. So I just want to point
He doesn't like to play in cold weather. It's probably the more accurate way to say it, right?
Correct. So he was playing in Cleveland and Buffalo the last year, and the numbers weren't great, but they weren't awful either. They weren't Keenan Allen awful numbers, right? Like, I think he's got way more left than what Keenan Allen has.
Okay, that's fair.
He's only 30. Like, I think if he was 32 or 33, I would be like, okay, we're probably done. But could he give you 1 year of wide receiver 2 play? Maybe it's 14 games, right? 14 games of wide receiver 2 play until you figure out a different solution next offseason. I think so. I think he's the best. Know. Well, I don't know either, but I know that he's better than some of the other receivers. Like, I don't even want to go down the list of names because it's very depressing. He's better than every other option out there in free agency.
There is no real good free agent market option.
No.
And I include Amari Cooper in that, but yeah, your point being, yes, Amari Cooper is, separated himself, the most separation he's done a bit from himself from the number 2 wide receivers in this class. I mean, look, I will say that, your arguments about the Cleveland not having a good quarterback, and then him going with Joe Flacco and not being able to do something kind of cuts both
Josh
ways.
Allen or Flacco?
I mean, Josh Allen, yeah, Josh Allen kind of cuts both ways, and then.
But it's just harder. It's hard when you're going mid-season into a new offense. So
it's also hard when you don't make it onto the field because you're not practicing very well.
That's a different issue. But I think his relationship with Dak, and he played well with CeeDee Lamb, and
that's fair.
He went to basketball games with Micah Parsons. Like
maybe you don't bring up him going to the basketball games during the COVID protocol violations. Maybe that's not the pro argument that you're making.
Again. This is not a perfect solution.
No,
but it might be the best of the bad solutions that are out there.
That's the thing. That's the key point, right? Is that there is no perfect solution. All of these solutions, even the trades, have warts to them. And like I said up front, the quality of the solution at wide receiver, the more problems it seems like you're going to have to deal with. Pickens, Cooper, all three of these situations come with pretty serious warts, but they also provide the best options for getting the best player in here.
I think Amari Cooper averages like 77 yards per game at home, and it's like 80 in a dome. Why don't we just use him at home? I know I'm joking, but just have him be a designated home player. He doesn't travel. He just stays at the Star, and that's where he's going to play.
You're joking, but Mari's going to hear that, and he's going to get an idea, Marcus.
Hey, that sounds good to me. All right, so we'll see what they do. I anticipate the Cowboys will make some kind of wide receiver move, not this week, but probably over the summer, because there's just no way they're going to go into the year with these guys currently behind CeeDee Lamb. It'll be fun to see what they eventually end up doing at the receiver position. That is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow.